So we're almost to the end of chapter 1. Did you really think we could go almost 2 months and stay just in one chapter? We're doing it. It's going to be good. Last week we talked about how Jesus, one of the first things he does in his ministry is go to the synagogue and cast out some demons from a guy. We talked about the symbology worked up in that. The week before, Nick had talked about what it is to be an ambassador of Christ, how we're called to emulate Christ today. And so we saw a little bit of that with the demon-possessed man. And now we're going to continue that line of thought today. The rest of the opening chapter of Mark is really Jesus laying the groundwork for themes and ideas throughout his ministry. And so today we're going to hit on a couple big ones. We're going to go through a decently big chunk. We're going to kind of fly through it and highlight a couple main things. So this passage I'm going to break down into three quick smaller ones. We're going to touch on a couple highlights and then talk about them as a whole at the end. Sound good? Let's do it. So I want to pick right up where we left off last week. We're going to start in verse 29. As soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once, him being Jesus. He came in and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. Okay, so we start out, this is immediately after last week. So we're going to see the stuff from last week, and today is going to be Jesus' kind of like one big day. Like this is a jam-packed day for Jesus. Just keep that in your head. This is very continual. And notice that this miracle wasn't something that was planned. They were going to have dinner, and they find the mother-in-law is ill. Now, when we talk about fever, it's not like, oh, she had a flu or something. Just take some Nyquil and you'll be better in the morning. Oftentimes, when they say someone had a fever, it was indicative of something a lot more serious. So it wasn't just, she had the sniffles. So don't think of it in that capacity. And once again, we see, what happened up there? Okay. How quickly and simply Jesus does this healing. There's no big incantation. There's no big ritual, no big rite. It's just, she just came in, took her by the hand, lifted her up, and the fever left. Very simple. Very direct. Now, this last sentence here could potentially cause some issues because it sounds very misogynistic at first glance. But I promise that's not the intent here. The idea of putting that she was better and then she began to serve them isn't to highlight that Jesus was so lazy he wanted a sandwich so bad that rather than make it himself, he's going to heal a woman to make it for him. That's not what's happening here. The intent of this is to highlight and show she is 100% back to normal. The idea of serving was a huge thing in the ancient Near East. We don't know if her husband is around in the picture at all, but the traditional setup was if you had guests into your house, the female partner would be cooking, the male partner would be like your server, would be the one running back and forth. So they would both be heavily involved in presenting food, serving the guest. By saying that she began to serve them, it is just saying she is back to be doing what she would be doing if she had not been sick at all. So it's just highlighting that Jesus 100% healed her. She is fully restored, fully back to be doing her normal routine. I know just, when you first read that, and rightfully so, it could cause you to go like, what's going on here? But I promise that is not kind of the intent of that sentence. It is just to remind us she is 100% healed. Moving on. Verse 32. That evening, at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or demon-possessed, and the whole city gathered around the door. Down. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew who he was. There's a couple things here. Notice the timing. If we jump back to the previous one, it's that evening at sunset. That's very important. Because what day was it? It's the Sabbath. The Sabbath ends at sunset. So basically, Saturday evening, as soon as the sun goes down, the Sabbath is over. Which means the healing Jesus just did and the casting out of the demon-possessed man happened on the Sabbath, which was insanely illegal. There was the long-established rule that you could not work on the Sabbath. And as we'll see as we go on, Jesus breaks this law a lot, and healing counts as work. It's arguably one of the main things Jesus gets arrested for, is breaking the law. So we see already another theme Jesus highlights is putting the well-being of people over an overly legalized system. We're going to see that happen over and over and over again. So we have a group of people showing up. Do we have it here? Yeah, okay. So one of my favorite things to think about is just imagine you are Ms. Phillips' mother-in-law. You've been sick, you've been healed, and then what happens? Every demon-possessed person in the area shows up at your house? That's not fun. I don't like that at all. But what does it represent? What's going on? Everyone saw what Jesus did at the synagogue, helping someone, casting out this demon, and so they all come running for help. They all see this person can help us. This person wants to help us. So Jesus does healing inside the church, and people flock to him. Oh, there's some good symbolism there. You could preach a whole series on that, about how we need to heal ourselves, work on ourselves individually as a church, and then people come. But they come, and Jesus heals them. He's meeting the needs of the people. He's addressing a very tangible thing they have going on in their lives that is negatively impacting it. Sick, illness, demon possession, all of that. But notice what he is not doing in this moment. He's not teaching. He's not giving lessons. This whole day started with that. It started with him basically in church giving sermons. But he's not doing that now. He's not telling them, you've sinned, you've done wrong, you need to change your lives. He's just loving. He's just healing, he's just helping. There's a lot to be said of that today in the church, with how we interact with people. There are times when teaching, when talking, when correcting, when all of that is needed. But not always. Jesus is just simply addressing needs, loving people in this moment. And I just love that. That's how his ministry kicks off. As we keep going down to verse 35. 35. There we go. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go to the neighboring towns so that I may proclaim the message there also, for this is what I came to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. I love just kind of what this represents here. Jesus has this massive debut. In Mark, this is Jesus' first real day of ministry. And what does he do immediately after? He goes and prays. He basically goes and debriefs with his dad. He goes and sits with God. That is huge and amazing. I love that. And we're going to come back to that in a little bit. The disciples go and find him, and they say, "Hey, everyone is looking for you. What are we going to do? We in one day have this massive base of people with us. What are we going to do? We're going to go. We're going to leave. Because others need to hear this message. Others need help." Jesus is not growing or developing a super fan base around him. In a weird way, he's doing the exact opposite. He could have stayed there and been an absolute star. He had people beating down the door to see him. But he didn't want to. He wanted to go away, to go visit other people, because others needed help. In a weird way, he's separating himself, Jesus the carpenter, from the message he is delivering. And that sounds weird, because you're like, well, it's Jesus. Why wouldn't he be pointing people to himself? If you notice, especially throughout Mark, Jesus is constantly pointing people to God. He is not trying to say, yes, I am here in this capacity. He's the Messiah, but he's pointing people to God. And that's one of the big differences between Jesus and the other messiahs of the day. Because there were a lot of people who made the claim, yes, I am this coming Messiah. One of the most famous ones we will meet toward the end of the book is Barabbas. When Jesus is taken prisoner, he's put before the people, and they say, one of these messiahs is going to go free. Do you want it to be Jesus? Do you want it to be Barabbas? They were doing a lot of the same thing. Both of them were saying, I'm the Messiah. Both of them were saying, I'm God. Both of them were doing this and this. And what's one of the big differences? Barabbas utilized violence to get change. Jesus did not. Barabbas rallied people around, pointing him to himself, saying, let me lead this charge. Jesus rallied people and pointed them to God, saying, this is God's time. This is God's message. Let's point this direction. So that's a big difference between the two. And we're going to see that throughout Jesus' ministry. That as weird as it is for us to think about, because we know, yes, Jesus is God, Jesus is Messiah, Jesus isn't pointing it directly at himself. He's redirecting it to God. Okay, so that is basically Jesus' first day of ministry. You thought you've had a busy day. Just imagine all of that in one day. So what are we to take from this? How are we to use this to emulate Christ? How are we to use this to be ambassadors to Christ? Well, there's a couple things we can kind of pull from this that set the scene for themes that Jesus uses going forward. The first one is people over policy. Jesus' healings get him in trouble. Jesus' healings break the law, but he does it anyway. Because he's putting people before policy. He's putting people's well-being above a system. The second thing we can pull from this is Jesus restores people completely. Simon's mother-in-law was fully healed. Hence the back to serving idea. Jesus is fully partnering with people. He's not telling people, hey, if you do this, this, and this, you pull yourself up this far, I'll carry you the rest of the way. He is saying, no, I will cast out the demon. I will heal you. I will do this because I love you. So for us, we emulate that by trying to do the same thing. We're obviously not going to be casting out demons or healing people, but we can be supporting them. We can be sitting with people through the food pantry, through other means, even sometimes tangibly just sitting and listening to someone. Whatever that capacity looks like to partner and heal emotionally, heal spiritually. The next thing is these healings are freely given. Jesus is doing this to show he genuinely cares for the people, genuinely wants what is best for them. We can't invest in people with the sole purpose of, I want you to come to church. Obviously, yes, I want everyone to go to church. That's great. But that can't be the reason I become a friend with someone, is to try to get them to change. We can't weaponize someone's need simply to try to get them to change. Again, I would love everyone to become a Christian, absolutely. But we can't utilize that desire to use need against people. To say, well, if you come here, you'll get food, you'll get this, you'll get whatever, but you have to stay for this. You have to do this. That's not what Jesus is doing here. Jesus is just giving out of love. Next thing, Jesus took time to pray. In my head, I love that Jesus basically has his first day of work, and then the next day says, I need to sit with Dad and talk about it. I need to debrief how my day went. So if Jesus thought it was important to sit, talk with God, just be alone with God, why should we think any different? This time is so important to just sit, listen, be present. And it doesn't have to be very long, but just small windows of time. We can just sit and listen to God. Just sit and be present in the moment. And the last thing, Jesus is not actively trying to build himself up, which again, sounds weird to us because it's Jesus. If anyone could and should be pointing to themselves, it's him. But he doesn't. He could have easily stayed in that first town and built up a fervent base. But he didn't. He was constantly pointing people to God. He didn't want his message, Jesus, the carpenter, the son of Mary and Joseph, that person, to overshadow the message that was happening, the message of God. It was his message, but he was always pointing people to God. He didn't want to lead thousands of people. The disciples later would go on to do that. That would happen, but he wasn't doing that. He was constantly pointing people to his Father. So, if we want to live a Christ-like life, we can't do it just so we can build people around us to lead, to point people to ourselves. We have to point people to Christ. Yes. We lead to direct to Christ in the exact same way that Jesus led to point to God. Yes. That's the emulation we do. That's how we model Christ's ministry, his style. So we have to use the platform, the whatever we've been given, to not direct to ourselves, to bolster ourselves up, to our own gain. We have to use it all to point back to Jesus. That is how Jesus lived his ministry. So that's a lot of stuff for, 8 verses. Jesus' first day, there's a lot of themes in there that we're going to see carried out throughout the entire rest of the book. But so we are going to, next week, finish chapter 1, and then we'll move on to chapter 2 after Lent. But think about this first chapter as your kind of opening salvo. It is setting up all of the themes. And we're just going to see them continue to roll out. We're going to continue to see how they interact, how they play with each other, and how we can continue to live into these themes. Join me as we pray.